So you people wanted me to talk about video games this interseasonal, and I obliged like a good servant of the proletariat, but what exactly should I talk about? Unlike anime YouTube, that's more or less secluded from the rest, or the film critic YouTube, where everyone is more incestuous than the Habsburg dynasty, there's no end to people talking about video games in all sorts of formats. Short, long, old, new, with scores, with politics, covered in cream and served cold. There's not a lot of niches possible to carve in this market, and those that weren't still carved are either very hard to do right, or are like that for a good reason. But this is for what? 3-5 episodes? I'll just talk about games I've played recently, and that's all. So the first on our list is ZanZarah, The Hidden Portal, a game made in 2002 by Phonetics Development, a German studio best known for Settlers 2 and Cultures, which is kinda like Settlers, only not really, and this game could just as well be described as kinda like Pokemon, only not really. Once upon a time, a girl from London named Amy was cursed by a goblin and or her own stupidity into teleporting into another world named ZanZarah that's currently dying, though for all I know the goblin just wanted to have a wife or something. After briefly explaining that the world is fucked and only she can save it, she goes on a grand and epic adventure of bumming around the world searching for artifacts that the local retards lost somewhere and ultimately opening the bridge between our worlds, allowing fairies to run havoc on Earth. Though we get the rune to return back to our world pretty easy, so why didn't she just return back and toss the rune to that place as far away as possible, or remained in the world and married the goblin is anyone's guess. On her way she is thwarted by the Dark Elves, or as I like to call them, Dark Crystal rejects, and one character betrays us, though honestly it's not that big of a spoiler. When you look like a mix between Saruman and a pedophile, the connotations kinda come automatically. Anyway, the gameplay of this game is Pokemon. You go around the world, collect and train various fairies, and these fairies evolve into better fairies, and occasionally you need to use one type of fairy to open previously closed areas. Simple enough. What makes it different for Pokemon is the battle system. In Pokemon you're fighting in turn-based combat, while here you're fighting other fairies in an arena shooter Quake style, which is fun and could get pretty tense when you and enemy fairies are on equal playing field, but other than that there's little difference in everything else. Like Pokemon, this game isn't exactly very hard or challenging. All fairies have an element they're strong against and an element they're weak against, and you have to find the most optimal 5 fairies to use and use them against everything. Once you get that all-star team, nothing can really touch you, and what can touch you usually dies after a try or two. It's a very zen game, perfect to whip out some podcast and listen to it while you're leveling up your fairies, but just like with Pokemon, the satisfaction of killing someone in one hit is buried under a ton of nits that eventually form one giant nit that covers the entirety of the room. First, unlike Pokemon, there are no free healing places, so it's entirely possible to be seriously mangled by some encounter, ran out of potions, and then teleport to the nearest city to heal, and then march back where you were. Then you have random encounters of varying levels of irritation. Sometimes they don't come when you need them, other times there's no end of the bastards burning through your potions and forcing you to teleport back to cities. Then there is death. Yes, you technically can die in this game once you ran out of fairies, though I still fail to understand what's the bloody point of that, especially when the game doesn't establish the rules in a clear manner. And with every fight you get the same animation where the enemy fairy either ambushes you or spins around a bit and then goes to this screen that has fuck all meaning or importance, as passive effects in this game are a total joke and the best they can do is to mildly annoy you or kill you instantly. And even the collecting part is kinda bugged because the local Pokédex only records fairies you own, not the ones you've catched. So the second your nature hooker evolves into an advanced nature hooker, best you have a spare one of those, or it's back to frantically catching one, you miserable completionist twat. And the sex distribution between fairies is not only random but a tad pointless if you really think about it. Pokemons are supposed to be animals, so giving them sex and sometimes even sexual dimorphism is logical, as we assume that to make more Pokemon, a mama Pokemon and a papa Pokemon have to bump uglies with each other. And unless you're going to tell me that Ice Queen over here is regularly dicked by polar bears, there's not much reason in this other than to cross a check mark. But let's end this before I go on a tangent. If you're one of those weird people who religiously play, watch and masturbate to everything Pokemon related, then don't play this game. But if you want to play Pokemon but don't really like the turn-based combat or just intimidated by the sheer size of it, then ZanZarah is the perfect game for you. Personally, I use this game when I want to listen to a podcast, so essentially I place it on the same spot as Counter-Strike or anal probing.
The coconut nut is a giant nut. If you eat too much, you get very fat. Now the coconut nut is a big nut, but this delicious nut is not a nut.